Hello. Um, yep, I'm at the top. Okay. So today I'm going to be going over the next chapter in the Bardic Course. I am several weeks behind in doing essays, and I've decided to no longer submit essays, and I'll talk about that later. I'm still going to write the essays. I should have written number 4 by now, but I've only got 1 completed so far. I'll get to it. But this is the essay I submitted for chapter 1. The question was, why is Druidism relevant today? So this was my answer. This is a very interesting topic. Why is Druidism relevant today? I contend Druidism never lost its relevancy, and the concept or the archetype of Druidism, collective unconsciousness, and ecological unconsciousness prove that. While Druids have always held various positions in society, whether called a Druid or not, there have always been people who communicated with the land in their own way and found ways to communicate those messages in a way that was acceptable at the time. There are centuries of stories and poems, secrets of healing that were passed down, ways of honoring nature that were altered to make them acceptable. Most of the holidays celebrated today can be traced back in some form to the days of the Druids, though you may have to look pretty hard in some cases. To me, the Druid archetype is the bridge between nature and human society, in many capacities, which seem to be expanding by necessity in today's world. The vast realm of environmentalism, insert the eye roll because then there's a lot of them out there, would fall under the header of Druidism today. While there was no need for such a position in the days of when the Druids were openly using the title and were respected for it, when I think Druid, I picture the cave dwelling that is often seen today. You know, the whole hands out, facing the opposite direction. Where the person is standing between a deer or a stag and another human, right? The word I was given was balance. The world has fallen wildly out of balance. And you don't need to actually be on a spiritual path now to know that. I think everybody knows we're not in balance at this point. This means Druids are not only relevant today, but the earth is calling for people to take up this mantle and defend her and restore balance. The unconscious topics need to be discussed together to make them make sense. In teachings from Saivine, a woman in the underworld who was an ancient druid, she described how they would feel called to dance in a ceremony. And I can't remember if I discussed this in a previous video or not, so I'll read this paragraph here. They would look around and note the dance was different in each direction. They spent hours learning and practicing the dance for their specific direction. Once everyone perfected it, the energy of the land caused them to move in a different way. That specific dance was only needed for a specific amount of time to get the earth to do what it needed to do. She also explained why there are so many gods. People would feel certain energy at specific spots, pieces of terrain in nature, and would start worshiping that energy. They gave it a name. Some would travel and share their experience and discover that other villages did the same, and the names and traditions would grow or not. based on how well people resonated with what was being done and what they heard in the experiences of those who did ceremonies for those gods. Much of this is the same today. How often do spiritual teachers say, take what resonates and leave the rest? These two examples from Saivine depict tapping into the ecological unconsciousness in ceremony and ritual. The acceptance of these changes was based on the various levels of collective unconsciousness each individual was able to reach. The earth spoke to them in her own way to tell them what she needed them to do. It was then up to them to decide if they wanted to respond and how they chose to do so. The book Sacred Actions is also a great example of tapping into the needs of the earth and sharing with people options that will help her, meaning the earth. Another great example of these two unconsciousness is permaculture gardening, no-till gardening, grocery row gardening, and food forest gardening, which are all crazes today and all great ideas. All of these forms, plus another I can't even pronounce, much less spell, are ways of growing food that work well with the earth based on observations. And I think the pronunciation for that other way is hugelkultur. It comes out of Germany, I believe is where it originates from. And basically, I've seen it in raised bed gardening on the Self-Sufficient Me channel. He's Australian, and he just takes whole branches and things like that, puts them on the bottom, and then layers on top. That way you have a good amount of decomposition coming up, and it helps fertilize the earth and develops the healthy insect culture, the worms, all of that stuff, to have healthy soil for the plants to grow in. He does still fertilize and things like that with natural fertilizers, but his base is that hugelkultur, whatever, however you pronounce it, concept of using that decomposition within the bed itself. Okay. Many started doing one or more of these for no explainable reason. There was no crisis when they started, because a lot of this was 10, 20, 25 years ago. It just sounded like a great idea to grow your own food. And I put in parentheses there, collective unconsciousness, because people all over the world just said, we need to go back to doing this, right? Some were inspired by watching others and learning from them. Others, such as David the Good, were inspired by nature. And this is why I like him. He knows nature never tills the land. Right. Nature also never exposes dirt to the elements. That causes erosion. Gee, what's the problem we have today? It is always covered in healthy forests. Specify healthy here, because the ones that are not healthy are being humans are helping by destroying what's there. So in healthy forests, it's always covered by plants, fallen trees, branches, or maybe even grass or moss. He has a book on grocery row gardening and decided he should expand a concept that he calls chop and drop. He literally grows his grass simply to place on his food crops to encourage health, because that is what he gained from the ecological unconsciousness, among many other things. And he'll even do it like when he's thinning his plants out, if he's got too many beets, right? He'll pull out the extras and just lay them there. let them decompose back into the soil. It adds that layer of protection on there. Very interesting to watch what he's doing. Okay, nope, I already did that part. He has made many changes to the way he lives within nature. I'm sure he doesn't call himself a druid. I'm sure many others would not as well. I'm personally fascinated at the way he has made changes based solely upon his observations and sitting with nature to understand how plants thrive. He then shares what he has learned with others in a way to reach as many people as possible, understanding the economical needs of his students, which is the viewers and readers, because he's got several books out there. Teaching is his place in the community, which is part of the archetype of being a druid. Yes, he and so many others that fit this portion of the archetype do not do rites. But that is why there are more details in future chapters to delineate those druids who simply do their small part and those who choose to be more involved. Druidism has always been relevant and always will be. The ecological and collective unconsciousness also will always be relevant, as that is where the past is stored and returned to us to remind us of what is lost, even though most don't see it from that perspective. It gives us the inspiration we need to return to the balance druids were charged with eons ago. As long as balance is required, so too will druids be. So that's what I submitted. And the reason I will not be submitting any more essays is because they didn't like it, because I didn't quote the people that were in that chapter. I have spoken in several previous videos that while I agree that spirituality and science need to be bridged so that spirituality makes more sense, I'm not interested in the science. I'm going to go with the spiritual teachers and what the spiritual teachers are coming out with, because that's where I want to be. I want to be on the spiritual side, not the science side, and I don't want to be in some point in the middle, right? I want to be a guide to help others get where I'm going, which is the point of this channel, right? Yes, Druidism is the base of my spirituality, but I'm also on the path of ancient Druid, which is why I went through the Emerald Tablets, because the Emerald Tablets is ancient teachings. And a lot of the now teachings, some of them contradict, others try to build off of that, and they don't always do a good job of building off of that. And I have purchased some more of the ancient texts and have not read them yet. Some of them are quite large. I do, like I said in the beginning of this, need to go back to this book and go back to start doing my chapter essays on there. But I also decided to start looking at other Druidic organizations and what material they have to study. And I ran into this book, and the Druid Grove Handbook, a guide to ritual and the ancient order of Druids in America. And this book was, I'm not even out of the first chapter yet, if I remember correctly here. Yeah, I'm not out of the first chapter in here yet. This is amazing. Even though I'm not really interested in the sciencey aspect, some of the history I am. And there's some very interesting history stuff in here that I suspected. but he's got the documents to back up some of that history. So it was very, very interesting. And I'll probably talk about that in a later video too. I don't know if that means I'm going to resume a Wednesday video because I'm actually quite busy at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, which is why I'm behind on doing my essays too. So I think that's all I have to share in this specific video. Thank you for watching.